Welcome to the AI panel. So quick introductions here. Carlos, his birthday, co-founder of Wovenware. This is an AI and dev shop. If you're not from Puerto Rico, if you are, you probably know it. It is one of the foundational companies in the Puerto Rico tech ecosystem. They have been pioneering force here in Puerto Rico for 20 years. Did I get that right? Yes. Wow. Yes. Adam moved here for about a decade ago, almost now. Better, 7 years, better part of a decade. He's a serial entrepreneur from Silicon Valley, and one of his most recent ventures has had a huge impact on the island, Holberton Coding School. So this is really bridging the education gap in coding and allowing talent to become software engineers in less than a year. And Hunter is a partner at Hunter Shkolnik. Has been in Puerto Rico also for the better part of a decade now. A law firm that has a number of specialties, including pharmaceuticals, environmental, and commercial. So I want to jump right in it. This has been a very interesting month in AI with Sam Altman getting fired and rehired and the board getting removed. And so, Adam, I want to ask you first, how has open AI changed the way that you work?
So I'm a coder. I love to code, and I was a computer science professor, and then I did tech startups for 20 years, and I still code. I still work on coding projects, and like Lauren said, Holberton Coding School, we have students. For me, it makes things so much easier, right? It helps a lot, but you have to be aware of the dead ends. I've been working on a project this week, and just a couple of days ago, I was trying to set something up. It doesn't really matter what it was, but it was a technical thing that I'd done a bunch of times before, but the software had changed. It's more up to date, and I had asked, OpenAI, hey, how do I set this up? Because there was a new thing that was out. And it told me very confidently, oh, you create a file that has this format and you put the file here. And I did that, and I was having lots of problems. It didn't work. I spent an hour basically debugging, and it turned out I was asking it something that was just two systems that weren't compatible, right? So it knew enough to trick me into spending a whole hour, wasting my time. And in terms of this, but there are many times where it gives you the answer and it's exactly right. Mm-hmm. So you just have to know, and you have to be able to test what it tells you. And we tell our students the same thing, right? And we try not. So our program basically is 9 months, where we take somebody who could be a barista or an Uber driver, and 9 months later they're a software developer, a junior full stack developer. And in the very beginning, we encourage them not to use any of these tools, the AI tools, because you have to learn it yourself. You have to understand yourself how this works and really get it into your mind. And we were freaking out, right, when it first came out, because it could do all of the coding exercises that our students needed to do. So we warned them against it, and then we solved this problem by having a very kind of hands-on approach. So our program, we have what's called peer learning days, where they have to describe what they're doing. Every week there's a peer learning day, so they have to talk about their projects. And if you just used OpenAI to write your software, you're not going to be able to discuss it. And so, we're testing them to make sure that they're not cheating. And then towards the end, when they do their final projects, we let them use it, because that's the world now, right? And so you can use the AI to help leverage you and get a lot more done. And I think in terms of our students, it actually helps, because now you're a junior software developer, but you have an experienced AI agent to help you, right? And it can get you unstuck, and you can I think perform at a higher level. So that's kind of how it's changed my personal life. I think I'm much more productive with the occasional dead ends, and I think that's how it's helping our students as well.
Yeah, there have certainly been a lot of benefits. You know, our coders use it on a daily basis. We've integrated it into system. It's very useful, widespread. If you haven't used it yet, you can pretty much ask it anything. It'll do your homework for you. Um, but with this comes a lot of ethical and legal uh, ramifications. And so, Carlos, I wanted to ask you, what ethical challenges do you think were behind the actions in the last couple of weeks at OpenAI?
Well, if you read a lot about this stuff, uh, in Silicon Valley right now, kind of there are two bands. There's the bands of people that think AI is great. We have to push the boundaries to where we can get. We have to go there as fast as we can. And there's the other band of people that say, hey, wait, let's take it slow. Let's see how this is progressing, and let's do it in a really ethical and understanding manner so that we don't break things. Because what we can break is a lot more than we think we can. So actually what we saw at OpenAI was basically that battle live between people that thought we had to take it slow and people that thought, no, we have to go all the way. We know who won. So who knows what's going to happen from now on. But the truth is that there's a lot of need for ethics in AI to be sure. I think AI is so new that it's really there's not a well there's a career, but you don't study AI in the university right now. You don't go out with a degree like an engineering degree. In engineering, you have to take your ethics at engineering, which is very important because of all the history we know. The buildings, the bridges that fell because engineers did not follow or not ethical in what they did. Well, the thing, we're going to repeat history with AI if we don't start taking this seriously. There's a lot of government intervention that has to come in to help basically set up guardrails for everyone. So I think AI is going really, really, really fast. And everything that has to do with ethical and regulation is going too slow. AI is here to stay. It's very important, and it's all about augmenting human capabilities. It's not about replacing humans. So how do we do it? And we create an environment with the right guardrails to let this move forward.
Yeah, I think that's the right way to look at it. A lot of people don't realize that if you're not using it on a day-over-day basis, that it still requires human intervention. And will for the foreseeable future, in my opinion.
Agree.
Yeah. Hunter, on the legal side of this, so in order to build OpenAI and build an artificial intelligence that is as smart as it is, it required a lot of training data. And the training data in a lot of cases is from, copyrighted or under ownership of authors and musicians. And so still talking about OpenAI, do you think that there are any legal ramifications coming?
Well, first, thank you for having us here. This is a really interesting topic. There are so many legal ramifications that are popping up every day with AI that we can't even keep track of them. The one in particular that you mentioned is, remember, we're training computers to think. I use that in parenthesis. We're training computers with information, with data. Who owns that data? Who's copyrighted that data? You have singers, writers, actors. I mean, you could make an actor say whatever you want now on AI. Think about if you're that actor who's losing the money. They're losing their that dollar check they get on the song they wrote 40 years ago. I mean, this has opened up so many problems in terms of where did the data come from, where did the information come from that you're now utilizing and transferring into a computer that's now generating it itself. Those lawsuits have started. We have been contacted by various different entities, I'll leave it at that, who believe that their data has been taken, has been utilized, and has been churned to kind of blend with all the other information to become an AI-produced piece of information. And that is just the tip of the iceberg. Then you talk about the ethics. There's legal ethics here. There's, what is right in terms of how you use these in business. I could look at it from our perspective. And California came out with the first ethical guidelines for lawyers to follow. And they're being proposed just in the last month. And I think it's going to be following in every state in the country. I mean, think about it. A law firm like mine, we have here we have 150 employees that I can put out on a project at anywhere from $250 to $1,000 an hour. Then you have someone who says, I can just run it through the computer and get the answer in 2 hours. You're putting people out of work. Then the question is someone utilizing the AI to answer those questions and then sitting back and billing that time to a client? Do you have obligations to the client to use something that's quicker like AI and not bill them the hundreds of hours? And these type of questions are coming up every day. And from our perspective in what is a fairly large law firm, right now we don't see it as ready for prime time. I've spoken on this topic at various conferences across the country. It's great. It has so many potential good uses. And in the law field right now, we've seen two big examples of lawyers relying on it to their detriment. One suspended, I think, in California, and another one sanctioned in New York because they thought they can rely on it as an end product when in fact it is simply a tool that they can maybe use, and then you have to double check it using someone to make sure it's right. Mm-hmm. So to answer your question, there are so many legal issues that are coming up.
Tip of the iceberg, then.
That's an understatement.
Understatement. I agree. I agree with you. I know just like working in AI and ML what it took to build that machine, and they scoured the internet to build it. So just a little bit of stage setting here, and I think I probably have my answer, but in your careers, what is the most rapid change that you guys have seen? Like, when was the most rapid change? Was it like cloud computing in 2012, 2013, or is this truly like the most rapid change we've seen in tech in the last couple of years? Anyone, it's open.
Let me give you I go way back. So, I mean, I remember that first fax machine when my boss sent me to a FedEx to get a document from Arizona in New York, and I was like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. So I've seen a number of changes in my field. I think, number one, having the computer in an office was the number one thing, that we could research things on this thing called the internet and get answers as we're prepping to cross-examine a witness. But now what we're seeing with AI, and you're taking it, I think, when it's ready for at least my field, it's going to be such a benefit to our clients. It's going to be a benefit to the whole work environment. We can get answers quicker, more accurately, if it's done right. So I think we are now going to see, what I thought was huge with a paper fax machine with the rolls, that took years to understand, the import of it. This is going to happen in months. I mean, my involvement with AI started when I started seeing all the news articles back in April or March of this year. Oh, wow. And I was like, wow, what's this going to do for our field? And we've used AI, but not generative AI that we're seeing now. We use where we trained our own systems to act as an AI, but this is huge.
So yeah, I definitely agree. I think in terms of the changes that I've seen that were rapid, I mean, the whole .com, I lived through the .com, days, right? And so I was a professor in, 1996. I moved to Silicon Valley. Google didn't exist. Yahoo and AOL were the champions of the day. And, rapidly we saw a lot of change. And, but I think this is bigger, right? I think this is bigger. The .com crazy times were crazy, but
bigger than .com.
I think it will be. Yeah.
I don't know. For me, it's kind of different because it has all been building up to where we are right now. And we're at a point where there's so much technology in our hands that we really lost kind of the vision of what the .com was, what the internet was. And now we have all this information available in front of us that it's hard for us to make sense of it all. So now there's this new tool that just suddenly allows us to consume all this great amount of data, great amount of information that we have in something that we can digest and process. So it's, they all move really fast. They just seem faster right now because we have all these building blocks that came before.
Yeah, it is crazy how different it is, right? I remember my first exposure to neural networks, right, which is underlying all this stuff, and it was around 1985, right? And there was a professor at the University of Colorado, and he gave a seminar on neural networks, and it was one neuron. And he spent the whole 45 minutes. I was a little bored by the end, but yeah, talking about how you activate the neuron and the different, functions and all this stuff. And that was, basically 1985, right? And now we have, billions of neurons on demand, which are powering these systems. So it's exponential, right? And it's just, we're now at the really interesting part of the curve.
Do you guys want to go into a little bit for the audience? What is a neural network? Like high level, layman terms.
Really, really high level. Neural networks is really trying to emulate how the brain works and breaking things into pieces, and that can be processed apart and then come together into something. When you use a neural network in AI, what it means is that you're really not telling the AI what do you think is the data that's relevant for the prediction that you're going to be making. The whole algorithm is going to find that out in the data. Think about problems like computer vision. Getting a computer to understand or see where is the cat in an image, or is this a woman, or is this a man? That cannot be done with traditional machine learning because it's really hard to be able to understand and tell them, hey, when you see this type of pixels next to this type of pixels, then this means that it's a man, or it's a cat, or it's a woman. With a neural network, the architecture can do that by itself. So that's why computer visions and some other of these really, really hard problems we've been able to solve, because the computer itself is able to understand what is the relationship between the data.
Yeah, I would just add to that is basically, as Carlos said, it's a neural network modeled after the brain, and the neurons are basically just mathematical functions. What's surprising, and I think surprised everybody about a year ago, was that now the computers are so powerful that you can build these massive neural networks, and really they're just math, right? It's just a bunch of math based on a statistically weighted network, and but because they're just so big, they're able to accomplish these amazing tasks, right? So.
But that's a good point about the statistics of it. It's all about, think about ChatGPT. ChatGPT is just predicting, based on your question, what is the next word that should come after the one I just put in. It's that there's no context, there's no intelligence behind it, but there's so much data that they're really good at it, that when we read it, we are just amazed, like, wow, somebody had to thought. There's thought in it, but there really isn't.
Can I add one thing to that?
Oh, absolutely.
And it's remarkable because I'm using it, I see it, no idea how it works. So hearing about the neural network is interesting, but just remember it doesn't think. And we have seen some pretty bad examples of people being embarrassed using AI to the exclusion of using their own thought process or someone's thought process. As I mentioned before, 2 lawyers have been publicly ridiculed, one in New York, one in California, for relying exclusively on an AI system to generate something that had to be perfect. When you give it to a court, you give it to a federal judge in a big case, you better be sure it's as near to perfect as you could possibly get. and they were just completely wrong. There was no basis to them. You can't just, I don't think we're at the point, maybe in some fields we are, but I'm sure in many like mine, it's not ready for you to take what's generated and rely on it as accurate. You're going to have to put some eyes on it. You're going to have to do some of your own work. It saves you a lot of time. I'm looking at it from the practical aspect, not the theoretical and where it can be used. I'm seeing it in the workforce right now in the context of lawyering or research work. We see very good potential. We see very good work. But if you let someone run with it and just rely on it and not do their homework and put some actual thinking capacity into the final product, you may be getting surprised with what you get. I don't know if that's been everyone's experience, but unfortunately, I've seen it, and I've seen it in the office setting, and I've seen it just publicly.
And do you think that lawyers, you touched on this a little bit earlier, but do you think that lawyers should be using it?
That's a topic we've debated at the last 3 conferences I'm at, and it came out 3 ways. Some said yes, some said no, some said maybe. And the bottom line is, I say the answer is yes. It should be used. Just use your brain and not just the computer's brain. There's good stuff there. When this all hit the market and before those unfortunate cases came out, I tried it, and I explained to you, in our discussions before, I said, let me just try to do a brief with this. And I don't do a lot of writing anymore. I luckily have other people doing it, but I wanted to try it. And it came out with, after a little bit of time, it came out with the perfect brief. I then looked at the cases that it cited. They were all real cases. I'm like, that's pretty good. I looked for the sentences. They were real sentences. The problem is it took the sentence or the phrase out of context of what the case stood for. And it basically was using it to support something that was the opposite of what it was suggesting. If I didn't look at it and check that out, I would have said, this is a beautiful brief. I would have fired a couple of associates and said, look, I could do this myself. Now I learned. And then we saw the public embarrassment of the lawyers that used it without doing what I just suggested. So it's a problem. But yes, the answer is it should be used. It should be learned. Just be careful and make sure you get some young people working for you that understand it.
And on the other side of this, do you think lawyers or any professional service that's utilizing AI to assist with a client's work should disclose that, well, for billing purposes, one?
Absolutely for billing purposes, but I think the answer to your question is yes. Yeah. I mean, I think it's going to be amazing for doctors. Like, think about a mammogram or a brain scan, and a computer can identify something that an eye will miss. I mean, sure, they should be using it, but should the doctor, the neuroradiologist, not look at that film and say, wait a second, is that really what's there? There is some professional judgment. And I'm not saying computer isn't important, and it's not going to be cutting edge, but you got to tell first of all, you got to use it. You got to tell the people you are using it. Mm-hmm. Let people know that.
Yeah. Yeah, and there have been, doctors and healthcare professionals have been using AI-assisted technology for far longer than OpenAI has existed. Yeah. So I want to get into some of the misconceptions. We've talked about a few of them here, but the misconceptions about the capability of AI, and we're touching on them in the legal sense. But Adam, you work really, and Carlos, you too, work really closely with programmers that are using AI now, day over day, since April or May of this year. What does the general population misinterpret about the actual capabilities of AI? Like, what are we missing? Why do we still need programmers?
Well, there's a bunch of questions there. First, what people most miss is something that we talked about a little while ago. This is a statistical model. It's not magic. It's not a future prediction with 100% accuracy. This is a statistical model that is really good because of the data it has. But it uses past data to predict a future outcome. So in a lot of cases, this is, for example, with language. Language is reading, it changes, but it doesn't change a lot. It takes time to change. So something like OpenAI is really good with a lot of data of being able to produce things that make sense to us. But there's other type of data that can change and can change rapidly. Things like the pandemic created havoc for companies like Amazon that relied a lot in their predictive analytics models and AI models to understand, kind of prepare their supply chain, buy stuff, do a lot of things, and just that from one day to the other, it changed completely, and that couldn't have been predicted. In our case, we made a predictive algorithm for a customer in the insurance industry, and it was working beautifully before the pandemic. After it broke down. The data no longer worked as it worked before, and everything that we had set up and how the model had been built just stopped working from one day to the other. So a lot of people miss that it's pure statistics. So just have to be careful of the data that we use, and the data is very, very important.
Yeah, I think one way to think of it is it's fragile, right? It's in some ways fragile. That it's learned data a certain way. One example that comes to mind is I'm working on a project with some students. We were using a new software system. There's this thing called Firebase. It's a cloud software system. And we were trying to set up something, and we couldn't get it to work. And we were having trouble, and so we said, let's ask ChatGPT how to do this. And so ChatGPT gave some plausible explanations or some ideas for us to try, and so we're trying that. We're trying the code that it had passed to us, and again, we're like beating our heads like, this is not working. What? It's one of those things when you're a software developer, you're always running up against bugs, right? So why are we getting these errors? And then I realized, I'm like looking at something, and I realized that this is when they had trained it up to a certain point. OpenAI works up until a certain date, and it always tells you. I forget what the date was, but it was like 2020 at that point, or 2021 or something. And we were using an API. We were using software that had been developed after that date, right? A version that had been developed after that date. And so it was telling us, how to use the previous version of the software. And we wasted an hour or so, like trying to figure out what was going on. But then once we realized, it's and we asked it, hey, how do you do this with version 9 instead of version 8? And it said, I don't know version 9 because I'm only trained up to version 8. And so you're like, So I think it's an example of how, it's super useful, but there are a lot of caveats here. It's fragile. It hallucinates. So you really have to be careful about the hallucinations because it'll convince you, right? I mean, it'll convince you that this is exactly how you solve this problem, and then you go do that, and it doesn't work, right? It doesn't, and it would never work once you figure out what the problem really was.
There's one thing you just mentioned that I think is so important, this idea of using the right version. I didn't know about this when I first started playing with it, and then as I went into it more, I started realizing, wait a second, it's only as knowledge, the one I was using, up till 2020, and what I was doing is pretty much exactly what you were suggesting. I needed something that was 2020 to 2023, and it just didn't know about it. And it's something that if you're going to get into it, you better be sure you have a current program and it's up to date, unless what you're doing is, based on archaic old data. But for me, that was a hole.
Yeah, and going back to the last part of your question about why do you need software developers, AI really is, at least for us at Wovenware, AI. We believe that AI is here to help augment human capabilities. Mm-hmm. It's not about replacing. So we are always very adamant that everything that we prepared and we build has a human in the loop, just to make sure that the process is working correctly, that the outcome is the outcome that we expect. So you will always need software developers. The thing is now that instead of just being 10 or 20% of super coders in the world, now almost everybody can be a super coder. Because like Adam was saying, you have someone next to you that can help you, that will augment and make you better.
But like a crazy professor might give you the wrong idea.
Oh, sure.
Occasionally, right? Oh, yeah. You have to detect whether the professor's a little crazy. They are mostly crazy, yeah. But it's usually helpful, too.
Are your coders using any of the plugins for like the repos that exist now?
Ours aren't. We're running some internal experiments first to understand how to better use it in our setting.
Yeah.
And then after that, we are kind of deploying that to everyone. But right now, we are just a small handful are testing and see how we can better use it for our workflow.
Yeah. Any autopilots?
Yeah, so we tried not to let them use it until the end, right?
Right, yeah,
So,
you're training coders.
Yeah, so you have to understand how this code works. Don't just have it autocomplete.
Yeah. Have you guys tried it all for code review? Like using ChatGPT for code review or any of like the autopilots for code review?
That's a good idea. We in the school, we don't really do code reviews. 'Cause
Okay.
it's, just you pass or you fail, or you get.
My whole life is code
We should,
review.
though.
That's one of the ideas where we have started to do
Yeah.
code review to make sure that we're basically using the right software patterns, that we're coding as kind of using the same rules that everybody has, so make it easier to maintain later.
And for anyone in the audience that's wondering why that's important, so when you get new software, like Apple updates and there are bugs in it and you have to wait like 2 weeks for all the bugs to be fixed, well, there are tools coming on the market now that can make that faster by allowing developers to identify issues in the code in an automated way rather than needing a senior developer come in and revise it and make suggestions. So that's the impact on your life. I want to, before we open up to like any audience questions, I want to talk a little bit about why Puerto Rico. So Carlos, in one of our sessions leading up to the ICON event, you said that Puerto Rico is home to the leading object detection technology. And I didn't know that, but that means that there's a lot of AI and ML talent in Puerto Rico.
Yes,
Yeah.
there is a lot of AI and ML talent here. I was telling you that we were named the 6th top company in the world doing computer vision and deep learning object detection. And like us, there's a lot of other companies and individuals doing great things. There's a lot of talent in Puerto Rico. There's a lot of available good technical talent that likes hard problems, likes to work. It's committed on getting to the right solutions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say in terms of Holberton, I mean, I'm bullish on Puerto Rico. I love it. I love living here. I love the lifestyle, the opportunities. With Holberton, we do a 9-month foundation where we take somebody from zero to hero. We say you're a coder after 9 months, but then there's another 9 months where students can choose a specialization, and we have machine learning as one of our specializations. And when we first started, nobody was doing it. And now it's super popular. It's also our hardest specialization. And so it's very math focused. And so we have to filter people out based on that. But I've been really surprised, pleasantly surprised.
Oh, they're great. I have one.
Yeah. These guys have hired some of our students. I recommend that many of you find out about our students. If you're looking for coders, we can help you out. And we do have demo days. So we have a class graduating pretty much every 4 months and 3 or 4 months. And so we'll have demo days just across the street in Santurce. So just a little plug. Keep an eye out for our demo days.
Yeah, they're wonderful. Worked with a number of Holberton coders, and it's a great resource on the island. And I think I have one of your first ML grads.
Oh, great.
Right? I won't out him here,
okay.
but yeah, he's great. Hunter, I have a question. So you have hired quite a team in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, we hired, we moved down here in 18 business. We're up to 140. I'm sorry, we moved down in 18, and we started with 55 employees, and now we're up to about 140, 150.
It's amazing.
Yeah, this has been an unbelievable, the workforce has just been remarkable.
And do you have plans to develop a legal AI in Puerto Rico?
Exactly. We still have been relying on state-based IT teams and developers. Our plan is to move everything down here. So now we're in the process of doing just that, including not just straightforward developing for our computer programs, which are, what we have is our own developed systems. We don't have outside. But we buy things that we have to plug in, so we want to have our own developers down here and slowly take over that process. And then in our business, marketing is a huge part, and there is the aspect of using the internet and having, developing our own programs to help, I don't like using the word solicit, but to get business through the internet. And certainly, with this resource down here, it's going to be unbelievable to build out our data from the data side down here.
Yeah, it's a great place to do it. One more question before we turn it over, and this is just a general question, but I have to ask for a prediction. What do the next 5 years look like now that we have, accessible artificial intelligence that's accessible to everybody? What does this look like from, regulation and all of it?
Yeah, I think we're going to see more specialized AI. Instead of a general ChatGPT, we're going to see some for very specific verticals and to use. Definitely, doctors and healthcare is someone that's going to use it a lot, especially to be able to take down notes and take all those EHRs that we have that they're not inputting all the data they should, to get that automated into those workflows, definitely. That's one. And from the regulation standpoint, we are going to see guardrails. We have to see them.
Like GDPR style, or?
I don't know, because the ideas right now are not scalable. And that's going to be the problem. It's how we're so far behind, and the technology is going so fast that whatever is done has to have scalability in mind so that it really can do something meaningful.
Yeah, I think generally I'm an optimist, but there's a certain percentage of myself that is afraid. I mean, I think how do you regulate it, right? It's so difficult. And could we really end up with a super AI in 5 years? I think it's a non-zero chance, So yeah, get ready.
Super AI. We gotta trademark that.
Yeah, super AI.
If you've just read the White House publication, I don't know, they called it the ethics or the Bible of what AI should be. I got through about 30 of the 250 or 260 pages and fell asleep. But there's a lot. I mean, just perusing through the executive summary and just the topics, the ethics, the use, the restrictions. I mean, this is going to put a bunch of lawyers to work for a long time and keep us busy and make some money doing it, because it's rife for problems, and it needs some control.
But the problem is that the control can slow us down, and China's not going to have any controls, right? So how do we continue to be the leader when we're throwing a wet blanket over everything, right?
That's the same argument we see in all industries. We can look. I make most of my living on environmental disasters, cleaning up the water. We're trying to do a good job of it, but there's a lot of countries in the world that just don't care, and they keep polluting it. We still have to take stands, and it's once again an ethical issue. But we also don't want to restrict business, so it's a give and take.
Maybe,
We have precedent on that. I mean, as great as I'm sure the GDPR was supposed to be, it prevented a lot of innovation happening in Europe for a number of years, so much that companies had to outsource access to data to non-EU data subject citizens. And so you don't have some of the benefits of AI, like access to financial services, better prediction on healthcare, and all of the amazing things that it can do. Yeah.
That's why when we manufacture things that are dangerous, we do it overseas. I mean, I hate to say it, it's the same thing all over
Yeah.
again. I mean, there is some ethics to what we do.
Yeah. I wanted to open it up in case anybody in the audience had pressing AI questions.
How can governments, starting with the government in San Juan and the government in Puerto Rico, and the resident commissioner, make use of AI to help the 3 million Puerto Ricans who live here and the 6 million who live in the U.S. but seem to miss it?
How can the government use AI?
Where do you think that government can start using AI? Who and what department can start using AI to accomplish what, and which specific AI platform?
Definitely, customer service would be my number one place to go. There's so many government services and so many people going to that rely on those services, and automation, AI to help process all of this faster. I think that would be that definitely is the first step, and that will bring value to everyone in the island.
And, we just heard panel after panel talk about regulations and getting permits and getting approvals. I mean, we bought a building down the street, and perfectly good building, but we're renovating it, and the process takes forever. And a lot of those things can be expedited using AI systems in government. I don't care if it's a building permit, it's the health department, or you name the permit. Most of this stuff, if you're using reputable, like big giant engineering and architectural companies know how to fill out the forms. It shouldn't sit on a pile. A computer with a good AI should be able to help process these things. And that's just one example. There are so many other ways of making the departments that we all have to deal with, whether it's Department of Motor Vehicles or you name it. AI will help the people if it's implemented by government and they're willing to spend the money. That's the issue, spend the money.
I have a question if I can. Thank you. Thank you guys for taking the time, first of all. My question is, do AI-generated images, videos, voice memos, whatever, have any type of footprint behind that could be traced back in the case that incriminating evidence is held up against you, and you have to prove that the things that are being held against you are real or are artificially created? And if not, what can be done to protect the average person from possibly being artificially set up in a legal standpoint and in social media, all these other platforms?
That's the heart of the ethical issue here.
Yeah.
Using AI really is.
There isn't a way, when you create AI, there isn't a watermark that was produced and it's there. It will look like something that is completely real. And that's where regulation has to come in, ethics have to come in. I was talking yesterday to a Forrester analyst, and during our conversation, we started talking about a new segment in technology called grief technology. And grief technology is about how do you get people access to their loved ones that are no longer here. So think about that. Think about having a conversation with somebody that you love that is no longer here, spending time of having a photo with a pet that is no longer here. And that can be nice and that can help you feel better, but that is super scary on what can happen with that, and then what becomes real and what is not real. So again, going back to the regulation piece of it, and the government piece of it, this is where it's really needed, and for what.
Wasn't there a story just yesterday about Sports Illustrated and the articles and the writers as being completely fake? They were running articles in Sports Illustrated from a make-believe author, and the article was fully AI, and they had to pull them down from their websites, and I think they were in the magazine. Not that people buy too many magazines anymore, but it was all over the news just yesterday. And think about how many are there that we don't know about.